It's my pleasure tonight to welcome Patricia Marx and Roz Chast to Politics and Prose. Patricia Marx has been a contributing writer to The New Yorker, The New York Times, Vogue, and The Atlantic Monthly, and has previously written for Saturday Night Live. She was the first woman to work on the legendary humor magazine, The Harvard Lampoon, and has also penned several novels, humor books, and children's books, some in tandem with tonight's other guest, Roz Chast. Rather appropriately, given the subject of tonight's book, it was Patricia's mother who was instrumental in getting the two to meet. Roz Chast is an award-winning illustrator and staff cartoonist for The New Yorker. From her first cartoon for The New Yorker in 1978, Roz has lent a sly, underground sensibility to everything she touches. Even through the accolades, including 2014 National Book Award finalist for her memoir, Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant, her line has remained raggedy and her wit awesome. Their latest collaboration, aside from the double ukulele-headed indie band Ukulele Meltdown, is Why Don't You Write My Eulogy Now So I Can Correct It? A collection of witticisms and criticisms from Patricia's mother, illustrated by Roz. Acerbic but doting, rarely is there a line that doesn't elicit either laughs or tears. Serving as moderator for the discussion tonight, we're also delighted to welcome Melissa Block, currently a special correspondent for NPR. Please. A special correspondent for NPR, and from 2003 to 2015, co-host of All Things Considered. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to our guests.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Is this on? It's working? Good. Okay. We collaborated on this book called Why Don't You Write My Eulogy Now So I Can Correct It? And this is the cover. I'm going to show a few slides. These are Patty's parents, from left to right. Patty's dad, Patty's mom. And anything you'd like to add?
No, it's nice to see them not as big as we have at the other bookstores. They're often large.
It's true. We have sometimes,
All right,
to have like 10 feet of parents behind you is rather something. This is my mother. This picture was taken in 1879. And Patty and I have been trying to decipher what the pin that she's wearing says, and we decided that it says millet.
The Chasts love millet, the Marxes love barley. We were a barley family.
Yes. My parents really, they believed, especially my mother, believed in the grain millet, and, This drawing here, this really sort of explains kind of how we met.
This is why we're here, really.
Yes, really. This is
believe it or not.
ground zero.
This is the first piece that I ever had published in a newspaper that my father didn't Xerox. And it was in the Atlantic Monthly, really around the time the Magna Carta was written. And I was in my early 20s, as was Roz. And oddly enough, it's kind of still pertinent.
Yeah.
And we were starting out in our careers, and this was published, and my mother called and said, "It's a great illustration." And she said, "I think you would like that illustrator. You should call her up." And that is the stupidest suggestion in the whole world. But even more stupid is I did it, because I do everything I'm told to do. And so I called Roz, and we had not such an awkward conversation. It was kind of like your mother, saying, "That girl in the playground, she's 6, you're 6, go play with her."
Yeah. Patty's mother set us up on our first play date, basically, even though we were about 23.
And so we've become friendly. We've been friends ever since, and have done about 3 million collaborations.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So this is... there it goes. Okay. This is... I'm going to show some images from the book. Humming is hostile. and something that Patty's mother
we believe.
Yeah, it's completely true. I mean, you know, you're with your mate, and suddenly like.
I can't talk. I'm humming.
Yeah, anything wrong? Oh no, just humming. Never serve salmon when entertaining. It is boring.
And it doesn't matter if people like it.
No,
It's boring, and that's
boring.
bad.
Nature, if seen at all, is best seen from a car. And
We believe this very strongly. We actually think even taking a car to see nature is sort of excessive.
Yeah,
we think
because
pictures do
because
fine.
there's plenty of wonderful nature books in this very bookstore.
We have a friend who was with his mother, and they were driving through the country, and they were city folk. And a deer crosses the road, and she said, "Look, a picture of a deer."
Yeah, well, and my family also felt this way. I grew up in Brooklyn. My parents were very much city people. In fact, when I had my second kid and we moved out to the suburbs of Connecticut, my father asked me, "So, how many channels do you get out there?" It's like we were moving to like Zanzibar or something. But everything to my parents outside of a certain radius of New York was the country, and yeah, they were the same.
That radius, we should say, was pretty tight.
It was
right?
pretty tight. I mean, in fact, it was like really, it wasn't just outside of New York or even just outside of Brooklyn. It was outside of the neighborhood. I had a friend in my...
Did you ever travel to the living room?
We did. We traveled extensively inside the apartment, but very rarely to the other side of the building. In fact, I had a friend in my building who moved to Canarsie, and I never saw her again. She might as well have moved to Tokyo. Girls named Susan are full of confidence. I don't know. If you're writing a novel, I'll tell you what to do. Don't make it boring. And you can see
Yeah, and another bit of book advice is if you have a book club, do not select Absalom. It will dissolve your book club.
There was a lot of fashion advice that Patty's mother gave out. This was one of my favorites. Never wear red and black together or you will look like a drum majorette.
Interestingly, for most of our tour, I wore red and black leggings, and we were followed by no bands.
No bands. But I think you didn't have the hat.
I didn't have the hat.
So
I left
maybe
it at home.
If you had that hat. You don't need to spend a lot of time in San Francisco. It's all frosting and no cake.
We were in San Francisco.
Yes.
We blamed that one on my mother.
Yes, we did. Yes. Come on. If you use me or him ungrammatically, I have failed as a parent. And the book is The Bedside Book of TV Anchors Who Have Used Who and Whom Incorrectly by the author of If You Ever Say Irregardless, I Will Disown You. And,
Our parents shared that.
Our parents shared that big time. My parents were teachers. And I think also as children of immigrants, they wanted to make sure that I spoke English correctly. And I had this friend, actually the same friend that moved to Canarsie, who had this incredible Brooklyn accent. And my parents, I think maybe that's why I never saw her again. It wasn't just the Canarsie. It was the fact that she would say, "Roz, you want to go to the store with me?" I mean, she was really... Irregardless, yeah. But... I mean, even to this day, if I hear a newscaster, which I sometimes do, and they'll say irregardless, and it's just like, I just want to declare a fatwa on them. It's like, everyone has a determined number of footsteps to use up in a lifetime. It's reckless to exercise since you will only exhaust your quota sooner and die. And
Another thing that our parents
shared very much.
That's why they never met each other. They were stuck on the chair and the sofa.
Yeah, well, I think if my parents had one motto, it was really just why ask for trouble. If you run out of food at a dinner party, the world will end. And drew this illustration of these two aliens, and one of them is saying that in the distance you see like the Earth has blown up, kablam. What happened out there in quadrant 63? Mrs. Proskoff ran out of brisket 2 minutes ago. However, don't go overboard or your table will look like a Las Vegas buffet.
And we did notice that there's salmon that made it onto the table. Boring salmon.
Boring salmon. Redheads are extroverts. Yeah. Yes, there are. Mike says you can only get a Dalmatian if the spots are symmetrical.
And I guess Mike's not here, so I'll just say that he lived by his words. They got a Dalmatian. He and his husband got a Dalmatian, and they returned it because the spots weren't right. And it's sad because a little white out and magic marker.
Yeah, you could just fix it in a jiffy. I'm going to show just a couple of mother-oriented cartoons that I had published in the New Yorker. This is Mother's Day cards, bitter, pitying, ironic, guilt-inducing, and pro forma. This is Mom's Mortuary, and I grew up hearing all these things. He never should have divorced his first wife. She was a floozy, and this is what happens to floozies. He pushed himself too hard. Again, this is related to the breath thing. She was never the same after that crackpot diet.
Which I'm wondering, on the back, in my family, it would say, at least she was thin.
And this one was possibly one of the ones I heard most of all. He moved to Florida, and boom, 5 minutes later, he was dead. This is when moms dance, and you know, a lot of times people ask me where I get my ideas for cartoons, and most of the time I can't really tell them. But this cartoon really did come from life. When one of my kids when she was about 16, she was doing her homework in the living room and listening to some music on the boombox. And you know, there's almost nothing more horrible in the eyes of a teenager than the adult human body. And an opinion with which I sort of, you know, understand and agree. But if you want to gild that lily, just do a little kind of, you know, a little dance. And I guess I just wanted to sort of see if she was paying any attention to me. So she was listening, and I kind of did this little dance. And she just looked up and she said, "Mom, stop, you're hurting me." And I asked her if I could use it as a line, and she said, okay.
Didn't your son, when he was little, I had this memory suddenly of, you had to give him something when he was waiting for the bus stop, and he said,
"Oh,
like,
yes.
Mom, get back in your box."
No, he said, it was close. We were waiting for the bus at the door together, and he just turned to me at one point. He must have been in 4th grade. He said, "Mom, get back in your hole." And I'm going to close with this. This is one of my very favorite quotes. I got really obsessed with doing hand embroidery a couple of years ago. So this is a piece of hand embroidery. It's a quote from a Polish poet named Czesław Miłosz. And he says, "When a writer is born into a family, the family is finished."
It's an accomplishment.
It is. So we'll end the slideshow part with that, and now.
But there's more.
But there's more. Yeah. So now we will have a conversation.
Well, as you can tell, I have not much to do here. But it is, I can think of no better way to spend a muggy Friday night than as the straight woman to these two funny people. The notion of mothers making pronouncements, I think, is something that a lot of people in this room can relate to. And I wonder at what point you realized that these were diktats that you both were sort of being imbued with very early on. Do you remember sort of the first time that you realized that? Or what the first one might have been?
What was the first one? I was told, I put this in the book, when I went to overnight camp, it was Parents' Weekend, and I didn't miss my parents at all. In fact, the first thing that I considered a joke, notice I didn't say it was a joke, people would say, aren't you homesick? And I said, no, I'm sick of home. And I thought that was so hilarious. And I got a letter from my mother right before Parents' Weekend, and it said, when we come for Parents' Weekend, whatever you're doing, we want you to stop and run up to us and hug and kiss us as if you love us, because it's too embarrassing. It's like, fine if you don't love us. We can deal with that. But it's just like, it shouldn't look that way.
Just act like it.
And I did it.
Roz, what do you think?
Well, I know for this book, the first, Patty had been mentioning these things that her mother said for a number of years, and I think it was the drum majorette one where I just thought, like, this is just so hilarious. I think that maybe it would be really fun to put them together and illustrate them, because that one was very visual to me. I could just sort of picture, this red and black outfit, and I thought, oh my God, she's completely right. And
then the other one that we agreed, and we hadn't realized it, was plaid shouldn't be based in white.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah. How many we owe so many people apologies for wearing white based plaids.
Well, yeah, clothes. I mean, you mentioned this
Yeah.
before. Your mom, though, too, I think, had pretty strong feelings about what should and should not be done.
Well,
with clothes.
absolutely. But my mothers were often very, like, weird health things, like never sit directly on the ground. And the reason for this was because her best friend, when she was growing up, her name was Beatrice Jacobson. I still remember. She went to camp and she sat directly on the ground, and she caught a cold in her kidneys and she died. And but there were lots of things like that. Like, I was not, to get water in your ears, you might as well just kill yourself. We
had no health thing. It was as if we were made of plastic.
Oh, like going out with a wet head. Oh my God.
But didn't she have a thing about high heels? High heels were for floozies.
Oh, high heels to my mother were for floozies, and it was a way to signal men that you were, quote, available. And the example that she gave, or maybe just like something that she was still marveling at, was that there was this friend of hers who was in her 80s and in an assisted living place who still wore these like tottering high heels. And she said, well, so-and-so, Marion, well, that's,
the oldest floozy alive.
I know. So, yeah. I mean, my mother really, you did not dress a certain way. You didn't. Of course, the speaking, we were talking about.
Yeah. But Millet was okay.
Millet was very good. Millet was very good.
One of the things that you write about in the book, Patty, is the notion of maternal regret and sort of second guessing every choice one has made.
Oh, we lived to regret.
Yeah.
That was the only reason we were interested. Like, we didn't really interested in our ancestors because we were sure they weren't very good. But we regretted every decision. It was always, we shoulda, if only.
I should have ordered the duck, I think was in your illustration.
Yeah. And I should have ordered it rare.
I don't think my parents, well, I don't know. I mean, it was very hard to sort of tell what my father thought because, my mother was really the one who expressed the opinion.
She thought for two.
She thought she was thinking for two, exactly. And I think that she always thought, basically, she thought she was right about everything. So there was not a lot of second guessing of oneself.
Yeah. In your family, Patty, Dad was just, along for the ride? What?
No, he was... trying to think. We've been asked about advice from our father, and the one that came to mind was I was driving along Chestnut Street with my father. He was old, and Philadelphia, and he said, before I die, I want to tell you something. And my father was much more sentimental than my mother. And I thought, oh God, I don't want to talk about this. And he said, never park in that parking lot. It's a ripoff. And I never have.
That's the next book, I think.
Yeah.
Advice from Dad. You have I mean, your mom clearly, we can tell, has strong opinions and sort of unvarnished truths to impart.
In superficial areas.
But you have this line, which I think is really telling, which is, there is a lot to be said for knowing you are not being lied to.
Oh yeah, my parents, both of them, were very good at criticism, and we called it constructive analysis. And I would get a call from my mother, and she would say, "I read your piece," and then there was a pause, and she goes, "Guess what? I hated it. But if enough people like it, I'll change my mind." So they were complete. I mean, but you would get criticized and then you'd move on and it was fine. No, there was nothing, whatever, I never ever heard, I don't know if you did, whatever, as long as you're happy.
Oh, God,
That was
no. No.
It was more like, as long as you're unhappy.
Yeah,
I know I've done something right.
I think that with my parents, the question of happy or unhappy did
No.
not even exist.
Yeah.
Because I think that their lives were so hard that, like, if I was unhappy, my mother's response was, stop staring at your navel. I'll give you something to complain about. I mean, she grew up, very poor. Her parents were immigrants. It's like, well, you have food in the refrigerator and you have a roof over your head. What are you complaining about?
Yeah.
See, my mother had a slightly different take. She criticized, but we didn't complain because we were supposed to be not positive, but people shouldn't feel sorry for you. And once my father told me something about during the Depression, and my mother said, "That never happened." She's like a depression denier. It was like, no problems, not to the world. We close inside, we can complain away, but.
And did she really leave you a message once listing 4 ways that you depressed her?
Yes.
But
It
she
was,
couldn't remember the 4th. I think.
"Hi, there are 4 ways you depress me. No apartment, no job, no boyfriend. I can't remember the 4th. I'll call you when I can remember it."
And did she ever come up with the 4th
No,
one?
she's still thinking.
She's still thinking,
Still thinking, yeah.
Is she
I was pretty glad that there are only 4, really.
covers a lot of ground, though.
Yeah,
those 3
I
right
could
there.
think of more reasons.
Do you ever think about if your mothers had met, would they have gotten along?
We did. They wouldn't have, and they would have. I mean, Roz's parents were a bit older.
Yeah.
And certainly they lived in a different place. So, but I think if they had in the same context, we decided they would like each other.
Yeah, in the same I think they might have. But my mother, I think, liked being admired, and I don't know.
Well, my mother would have admired your mother. For
Oh,
sure.
well, then
my
that
mother
would have
admired
been-
anybody.
Yeah, well then that.
Would they have
that
agreed
was-
on
yeah.
food? I mean, could they have?
Agree on, no, they
no,
wouldn't have agreed on food, and certainly not clothes.
Not clothes.
No. My mother was
Books,
very.
maybe if your mother
Yeah.
didn't read Absalom, things would be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is your mom still coming up with words of wisdom? Does she have some new ones?
I told her about the book, and I told her the title, and she said that she didn't say anything. I said, "It's funny, okay? Everyone laughs, and you said it." And she said, "Well, don't give me credit."
Tell me the context when she said the title of your book. Why don't you write my
we
eulogy
had
now?
gone
so I
to
can
a
correct it?
funeral or something, and she just thought it was kind of. And now she's 92 and she's not into eulogy writing, but I wish I had done it, because how great would it be to read a eulogy for your mother? Go, and this is the part you really liked. It would have been like it would have brought down the house. I mean, it's pretty easy to give a eulogy. People are on your side, but still.
Roz, do you want to read some of your annotations for
there you
the
go.
illustration for that page, which are pretty hilarious?
Yeah, well, this is you can't see this, but this is the eulogy, and I have annotations, capitalize, wrong, do not capitalize. This makes me sound like a nut.
That's my favorite.
Clunky, no one will get this, wrong, move to last page, you know how much I hate this word. Boring, cliche, take out this whole part, wrong, fix.
I just remembered my mother once. I was telling my mother an idea I had for a humor piece, and she said, and you're not bothered that it's a trite idea. And the thing was, I had been sort of toying with the idea that it was a little bit trite, but I thought, trite's okay. And kind of quashed that.
Yeah.
Do you hear your mother's voice coming out of your own mouth sometimes? Do you sort of stop yourself and think, "Oh my God, I'm sounding like my mom"?
I feel like I sound more like my father.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, kind of like these Lorna Doones. You know, or just like sometimes he would say these sort of nonsensical things because I think he was more of a sort of, like he would just be thinking about something else. Like last night, after we gave a talk last night in Philadelphia, and then we were supposed to be walking to the table where we were going to do a book signing, and I just sort of spaced out, and I like stood in the back of the line where the book signing was. and I thought,
Because we really wanted to meet the authors and illustrators.
sort of an existential thing. But I thought that's like the kind of thing my dad would do. He would just completely space out, and like his feet would be going in one direction and his brain was just someplace totally else. So yeah, I think more as I get old. Also, my father was he was a worrywart, and my mother was more of a can-do, and I'm definitely more like a what if I do, and like what if I don't, and should I, and you know, it's just way more complicated. Yeah. So,
Patty,
I think I got the worst of both. I got the anxiety from my mother, the fatalism from my father.
Yeah.
So it's like wait, so just worry, but it doesn't matter because I mean it's just like
Oh yeah.
bad. And I know we've been on this tour for a week and having a ball, and I have to like not be my mother and like, could we have a room with a better view? My father was once in an accident, kind of a bad accident, and they wheeled him into, I mean, he was out of it, into a hospital room, and my mother said, could he have a better view? And she also told, when my mother was having one of us, my brother, sister, or I, and they went to check into the hospital, she said, tell them if I can't have a private room, I won't have the baby.
I think maybe our mothers would have gotten along. I think, maybe.
Well, did it work? Did she get the room?
She got the baby. I don't know. I guess so.
Do you have you thought of more? I mean, as you sort of put the book to rest, did you think, oh wow?
I do. I did think of a lot. Now I can't remember them. It'll come up. Answer another question when I won't be able to answer that. I'll answer that.
What about Roz? When you're thinking about the illustrations, was it intuitive? I mean, did you feel like you could just channel Patty's mom and how she would be visualizing these things?
Yeah, I think to some extent. I mean, Patty and I have collaborated on a lot of projects, from 4 children's books to magazine assignments and all kinds of things. And one of the things about it that makes it fun is that it's not just like somebody hands you, text and then I do the pictures. There's a lot of back and forth. And I feel that we're so much on the same page about what's funny that Patty can make suggestions for the drawings and I can make suggestions in the wording and the text. And so, it's very fun.
We never really disagreed about anything, but so it's pretty easy.
What was that first meeting like after your mom set you up?
Well, is the first time about the children's book?
Yeah, I think it was.
I think it was. We were at a party, and I had written a children's book, and I don't know why I carried it around with me everywhere, and I ran into Roz, and I said, I wrote a children's book. Would you illustrate it?"
No, you didn't. You asked me like if I wanted to read it, and I said, okay, but of course I just thought, well, she probably wouldn't want me to illustrate it, but I was hoping that, that was why you gave it to me. It wasn't just like random.
You probably have nothing to do with this party.
Yeah. And then you called me up, and I think we had a conference call with Jane Martin, this other person who's, it's too long a story, but and boring. But I was so happy to be asked to illustrate it because I loved it so much. It was a really funny story about...
It's It's called Now Everybody Really Hates Me. And it was about a little girl who decided to spend the rest of her life in her room unless they're having something good to eat that night, in which case it would be her then she'd go in her room for the rest of her life.
Well, she gets sent to her room, and, she says, fine, I'll just be here for the rest of my life. And
the best illustration among many great illustrations in that book, Roz did, it's the little girl, and she looks like a little girl, and she's in her little girl room that's all cluttered with wonderful Roz details, and she's on the bed, and she has an old lady bun, and there's a sign that says, me age 40.
yeah.
Those were the days.
Those were the days, yes.
But wait, your mom had wanted you to meet like right after that Atlantic article, yeah? So that didn't happen.
It didn't quite happen.
Okay.
No.
But, I have to say that I've illustrated articles for many people, and nobody has ever called me up since then, like before. So it's
Say, my mom told me I should give you a call.
Yeah. It's funny.
It has not escaped our notice that you have 2 ukuleles here.
Ah, yes, we do.
Would you like to know why?
I would love to know why, and I think, probably with a little prompting, we might get you to make a little music here.
No.
The reason we play the ukulele has nothing to do with our musical abilities, as you will see.
Oh, good. Okay. Oh, we need them. Yeah, they're bringing a stand.
Oh, great. Oh, shoot. What?
Your music. Uh-oh. Okay.
Wait,
Okay.
Can I go? You tell the story, or or when we tell the story, you get the music, or what, vice versa?
No, okay, I'll tell the story.
Okay.
I'm just gonna. Okay. Well, we have this long. Okay. Patty was invited to a wedding. I guess this was maybe 2 summers ago, and it was happening at the same time as that solar eclipse. And here she comes. And there was a wedding band that was formed of a lot of the guests at the wedding, and they said to people like, bring an instrument to play. And Patty.
So they said, if any of the guests have musical instruments, why don't you bring them, and we will play Here Comes the Sun after the solar eclipse. And despite having taken 7 years of guitar where I only learned like 2 calypso strums and took the piano and managed to prove that I couldn't do it, I thought, how hard really can the ukulele be? So I found this for $49 on Amazon, and it's the cutest thing in the world. And really, it turns out I was right. If you have 2 hands and YouTube, you can learn how to play. Not well, but you can learn. And I showed it to Roz,
and I saw that ukulele, and I said, I think I might want one of these ukuleles because that is the cutest thing I have ever seen in my life. And for $49, I think I could manage. If it doesn't work out, I'll just have it as this cute thing in my house, or I'll give it to somebody or something. And it's only 4 strings, and I had played guitar, and it is the best thing in the world. And no, I do not own stock in Ukulele Incorporated, but it is so much fun. So
we love it so much, and we are so anxiety riddled that we decided they were going to run out a couple days ago. We decided they're going to run out and they won't have any more blue. So we ordered more.
Color. Yes, we ordered backups. While we were on this trip. So
as they say at the doctor, you'll feel a little discomfort and then it will be over.
Exactly. Okay.
All right. On your mark, this is the mother song. On your mark, get set, go. As I do your laundry, though you're 22, remember that I'll always be the boss of you. Did I mention starting now you're grounded? 'Cause all your pot I found it. P.S. I love you. You must Must I say it yet again to you, dear? Until the day I die, dear. Put down your damn phone. Phone. Elbows off the table. Mouth shut when you chew. Remember that one day soon you'll have kids like you. Never leave the house in that whatever. Eat all your peas forever. P.S. I love you. You. And this song, the only song that you can't memorize the title, is, because it's so long, is called I Should Be Working on the Railroad, but right now I'm working on some other stuff, and when I finish that, I promise I'll get back to working on the railroad, okay?
Now, also one other thing, our band is called Eucular Meltdown, and we specialize in public domain songs.
Because we didn't want to be sued, but now we're thinking that would be a good career move.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, on your mark, get set, go. I've been working on my memoir all the livelong day. I've been working on my memoir, and I just turned 3 today. Want to hear how I am growing? Rise up so early in the morn. Don't you know a single agent will help me toot my horn? I've been working on my laundry. I've been working on my laundry. Still have 5 loads left. I've been working on my laundry. Must report a 1 stock theft. Think I know who might have stole it. She gets here early in the morn. She lives in 12K with a carrot, and both of them read porn. I've been killing time on eBay. I've been killing time on eBay all the goddamn day. I've been killing time on eBay. Just bought some used bear spray. Can't you hear the FedEx coming? Logged in so early in the morn. Can't you hear the FedEx coming? Who needs 2 tons of corn? eBay, won't you go? eBay, won't you go? eBay, won't you go away, way. eBay, won't you go? eBay, won't you go? PayPal cut me off today. And we have one more, and it's very short because we know our limits. And okay, on your mark, get set, go. Park your car kinda near the curb. Ay, you just bumped into Herb.
I'm missing one leg. We have time, I think, for some questions. Another hand for the nuclear explosion. I will, is this still on? Is this still on?
I believe it.
Is it still on? Hello? I will preface this just by saying that one of the women sitting next to me has been called by David Remnick the only certifiable genius at the New Yorker. And I will not say which one. But Patty will. Questions from anyone?
Yeah, we can form 2 lines. There's a microphone by the pillar there, and a microphone by the cooler.
Yes, over here.
Over here, I'm the only one. It's such a pleasure. What a treat, really. So much fun. I just wanted to say my mother had a folder of obituaries that she liked very much, and she had circled things like, I particularly like this paragraph, and and when and we knew she was dying. I mean, it wasn't, But then I had to write the obituary, and I actually used she was a librarian. I actually used the folder like, well, she really liked this tone, and she would, annotate. I like the tone here. Anyway, it's a funny thing. But I also want to say, you live your hometown is my hometown. You live in the town that I grew up in. And one year at Christmas time, my stepmother said, I said, I would love to know where Roz lives. Where's Roz, my friend Roz? And she said, okay, we'll go down blah, blah, blah street. And so how will we know? She said, oh, you'll know. And at Christmas this one year, instead of a little baby Jesus in the front yard, you had a purple neon dinosaur, I think.
Well,
or
my
something.
husband.
I think you need to.
Yeah.
Was it Halloween?
Or maybe it was Halloween.
It could have been. My husband is a Halloween maniac. And you know how like there are those like really eccentric, usually middle-aged men who like kind of like go on a like insane electronic bender for Halloween for Christmas. He does that with Halloween.
He's a certifiable Halloween genius.
Yes, he is. He is.
So
it
is
could
it possible that you had a purple neon dinosaur in the front yard?
that I don't remember, but we did have a creche with a penguin in it.
So it might have been a completely different house.
Actually, it was a whole sort of nativity scene done with these plastic penguins.
Yeah.
It was pretty good.
A pleasure. I have no question.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else? There's a microphone on this side too. It's got to be someone.
Oh. Yeah.
Want to sing another song?
We have so many answers.
yeah.
Just out of curiosity. Siblings. How many siblings did you have, and where did you fall in the family as far as the oldest or youngest? And was that ever an issue?
Not for me,
with
because
your
I was the oldest and the best. And you know how they're like the abuser and the abused? I was the abuser. So consequently, I always think sibling rivalry is such an interesting theme since I won.
And I had no siblings. My parents had me when they were 43, and I think that was sort of like, well, there's enough of that.
Don't ask for trouble.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yes, over here.
Hi, how are you? Thank you. I recently learned that my grandmother planned out her funeral to sort of like even what she would wear in the casket. Apparently, it was a nightgown because old ladies like to wear
Fredericks of
nightgowns.
She wanted to be
maybe?
comfortable.
Well, she wanted to be
It's gonna be
comfortable
a
in the
long
afterlife, right? But also to give the illusion of slumber in the casket. And I didn't know that you could pre-plan these, so I'm wondering. You talk about eulogies. Did any of your parents, your mothers in particular, say, "This is how I would like to be buried. This is how I would like to be. Like, please plan this out for me"? Or did they have any specific requests around that part of their journey?
In my family, my parents never wanted to talk about it. But one time, my father never talked about it, but my mother did say, I don't want to be lying in a hole in the ground. I just want to be cremated. And so that's, what I did. I just kind of like turned the oven up to, shoved him in there,
We were just after the party ended or whatever ship is. That was we didn't have to go further, but in my family we didn't really care what happened at that point. But it reminds me, I know somebody. She lives in Washington, but her parents were in Connecticut, or her uncle, and when her uncle died, they got, I didn't know this existed, a obituary consultant.
Whoa. Is that like to get you into like a really good graveyard? Or?
I know, just to get to the a big splashy obituary.
Oh.
And
Wow.
good quotes.
Wow.
It's like getting blurbs from your book.
Yeah. I thought maybe it was like
Yes.
Over here.
I don't have a question because if I started, I would not end. But I did want to say that I was in New York a few months ago and saw Roz Chast's art exhibit,
Oh, it's great.
which was, I'm an art historian and spent a lot of time in museums, and it was the first time I had walked through an exhibit for 3 hours. Usually I'm good for an hour and a half, and people were just laughing all the way through.
Oh, good.
Which was a joy.
Oh, great. Well, thanks.
Yes, over here.
I just want to say, as someone who knew Patty growing up and knew her
Oh,
parents,
hi, Ann.
hi, you really did get your mom just right. My mom and Patty's mom were best friends. So,
I don't know everyone in this room.
Mom has read the book? What does Mom think?
My mother read the book. She thought it was good. My mother is like, if I robbed a bank and I got to be on the front page, my mother would be proud. I mean, no such thing as bad publicity.
So, but this is about her, right?
Yeah.
I mean, does she feel like you did her justice? Does she see herself in there? Or does she not talk about it?
I didn't tell her until it was at the very last time. I said, we're writing a book about mothers, kind of like, not really you, kind of Roz's mother. Well, not like Roz's mother, more like you, but really mothers in general. So.
Yeah.
Yes, over here.
Short people got no business. This is a little bit of a story leading to a question, and I don't want to force Roz Chast to feel like she has to draw a cartoon to everyone who sends her a letter. But I also grew up in Ridgefield, Connecticut, and I'm here with my friend from Peaceable Ridge. We were Silver Spring Road, and we were all New Yorker readers, and my mother sent you just a little note, and you responded to her with a cartoon, which meant the world to her. And I wish she were here, but crazy as it seems, she moved here to assisted living and died 5 years ago on April Fool's Day. And it's half a block from here. And we came from saying goodbye to her to Politics and Prose and sat in the cafe one floor down planning eulogies and the memorial. So to be all together here right now is amazing. So now a true confession. I Xeroxed one of your full-page cartoons, and it was women talking in the parking lot of what was the Grand Union, but I think you came later and it was the Stop and Shop.
Those were actually there were two different stores. There was the Grand Union that became CVS. This is
Into deep
we're
Connecticut
really getting granular here.
But you don't want anybody to go away thinking they were the same story.
No, it's very important.
No.
We're journalists, must be
I
factual.
could have lied.
Yeah, you'd be found out.
But yeah.
But what was the nature of women in Connecticut? Because you captured them as a species. So just a few riffs on our moms.
I don't want to generalize or anything. I think, of course, it's, hugely varied. I think, especially when I first moved out there, everything about moving to Ridgefield was a shockaroo. I'd never lived in an actual house before. I had two really little kids. I did not know how to drive when we moved out there. I had to take lessons from this kind of horrible guy who was a chemistry teacher in the middle school, and he was like central casting. He was just what you would cast as the sort of bitter, mean chemistry teacher in a junior high. And he would yell at me. And, I'd come home from the driving lessons in tears. I mean, it was just awful. So, I think it was just, I don't want to generalize about women. I've met people who I have nothing to do with, and then I have a couple of some really, really close friends. So,
Well, I think the magic of it is that we all recognize ourselves in your cartoons. They might be Connecticut people or others. Anybody ever here? This side is dominating the microphone in a big way.
Yes, I'm curious, how self-aware are you? Your kids. Your kids. What are they going to write about? What is it that they're talking about?
Well, here's the thing. Once you've written the kinds of things that I've written about my parents, you do not have a leg to stand on as far as your kids go. And I've told them they can write whatever they want about me.
But what will they write?
I don't know. I'm sure there's like lots of nutty things I've said over the years, tons of things. One time I was so angry with my son, and I'm terrible at expressing anger, and he must have been about 11, and I remember I said, I am so angry that my toes are curling. And, as soon as it was out of my mouth, I just thought, that sounds like something a crazy person would say, So, I don't know.
Anybody else?
I loved the mother song. Could you flesh that out a little bit? How that came into being? And so forth?
Well, we really do only rewrite public domain songs. But here's the thing, and don't tell anybody. I don't want this getting out. Well, okay, so I looking on the internet, and I thought, wow, these 2 Beatles songs are in public domain. Turns out, okay, if you're in Canada and Europe, they are. That's the only one. But then I thought, this is kind of like Europe.
Yeah, and kind of like Canada.
Kind of, yeah.
Also.
Close.
Sort of close. Yeah, they speak English.
So then we just rewrite the lyrics. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, and we really do have this sort of like pretend. We really have a pretend band. I don't know if that makes any sense.
We're making episodes. We're videotaping a storyline, and we do have this band. It's called Euclid Meltdown, and our so-called story is
what is the origin story? Let's go way back.
Well, you guys might remember that we were at Woodstock.
Yeah, with the camera didn't have film in it though.
The problem was
we were facing the wrong way.
We were facing backwards, but we played. We there.
We played with Bob Dylan. We were the ones who told him to go nasal.
Yep, and as you might remember, I told Joni B. I told her to cut her hair.
Right.
Remember?
And we were originally the Daily Pukuleles. And we had our friends Meg Wolitzer and Laurie Moore in the group, but we had to get rid of them because they had talent, and we think that's pandering.
Yeah, exactly.
So we became the weekly Pukuleles, then the monthly Pukuleles, then the never Pukuleles.
Yes.
And then we were sued because we wrote a song to the lyrics of "Hang On Sloopy," and it turns out that wasn't in the public domain.
Yeah, that was, and then we were on the road for a really long time.
Yeah, got lost.
We took so many drugs. Patty with her Splenda.
Oh my God! I had to go to rehab for the sweet and low.
And me with the Advil. It was we were in rehab, and
and we loved it. We made ashtrays.
Yeah, we did. We liked the crafts aspect.
We loved it.
Yeah,
and then we played.
We made friends.
We made friends. Then we played at the Mountain View correctional facility and spa.
Yeah, like Johnny Cash and
and people threw things at us, and our then manager, Paul Rusin, sold everything on eBay.
Yeah,
and we got rid of him, and now we have a great manager, Doug McGrath. And he's transitioning from a men's shoe salesman.
Yeah.
So whatever you ask him, he relates it to shoes.
Yes. If you've ever seen Spinal Tap, just imagine instead of like 5 or whatever English guys, it's like 2 middle-aged ladies from New York who have this sort of a little bit delusional.
A little bit.
And our first album was called Duck and Cover.
Yeah.
So
and we also in one of the episodes. A while ago, we had we put a DVD for sale called "You Can Learn Uke in Your Sleep."
Yeah.
And in episode 2, we're confronted by Ellen Zweibel, who bought the DVD.
But a bad thing happened.
Right. When he woke up, not only could he not play, but he became a compulsive crocheter.
Yes.
He couldn't stop crocheting or using the word nifty.
Nifty, yeah. And so we have this one episode. We're trying to film these episodes about 10 minutes long, but we have one that we actually filmed in Central Park. Did we get a permit? I don't think so. But
we gave a concert at the band shell.
Yes.
It was very crowded, not with people seeing us, but the park was crowded.
Yes, and we had Euclid Meltdown loot.
Oh yeah, we had merchandise.
Single serving cottage cheese.
And Euclid Meltdown halibut.
Yeah, that was good. And stuff that I got from the Ridgefield thrift store.
Yeah.
That I painted our logo on, which looks like the 3 Mile Island reactor.
And we have a cause.
Picture a turquoise, like our ukuleles. It's a turquoise.
We should have brought the slides.
Yeah,
we have a cause. We're very, very for the climate, and we are have a program called Adopt an Iceberg.
Yes.
But we don't know what the difference between glaciers and icebergs are, except icebergs are Jewish.
Yeah. But we don't even know how to pronounce the name of our band.
No, we don't. That stopped us.
Yeah. That's a little bit of a sort of like sticky wicket.
Yeah.
So we
could do this for hours.
But we won't bore you anymore. But we really could go on forever with this, as we have. I mean, really, we're still on our play date, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we're going to let you go back and trash your hotel room.
Yeah, of course.
Roz Chast, Patricia Marx.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.